I told my husband I was pregnant, and he said, "You ruined everything." Then he left me, with my own stepsister, but years later, they all came crawling back, begging for a second chance. Before that night, my life with Brendan felt like a perfectly curated dream. He was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, ambitious, with eyes that sparkled when he looked at me. Our home, a quaint two-story house with a white picket fence in the suburbs, was filled with laughter and plans for a future that glittered with promise. We talked about children, about growing old together, about building a legacy. He'd hold my hand, tracing patterns on my skin, whispering sweet nothings that felt like vows. I believed him, every word, every promise. We were, in my eyes, the embodiment of a fairy tale romance, a modern-day success story that had it all. Then came the day I saw those two pink lines. A wave of exhilaration, followed by a tremor of nerves, washed over me. It wasn't planned, not exactly, but it felt right. More than right, it felt like destiny. I imagined Brendan's face, lighting up with that same joy. Perhaps a little shock, but ultimately, overwhelming happiness. We had always said we wanted a family. This was it. Our family. I carefully hid the test, a secret treasure, buzzing with anticipation, planning the perfect way to tell him, to watch his face transform with the news that our lives were about to change forever. I spent hours envisioning his reaction, rehearsing his joyous embrace, picturing us sharing this momentous secret. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting our living room in hues of orange and purple, I broke the news. I'd baked his favorite chocolate cake, placed a tiny pair of baby booties next to his plate. A silly, sentimental gesture. His gaze fell on the booties first, then flickered to me. And the smile I'd been so eager to see never materialized. Instead, a cold, hard mask descended. His eyes, usually so warm, turned to ice. "You're pregnant?" he asked, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, a question laced with accusation. I nodded, a hopeful smile still plastered on my face, ready for his embrace, ready for the joyous tears I'd imagined. "You ruined everything," he spat, the words slicing through the silence like shards of glass. "Everything we had, everything I planned. You destroyed it all." The air left my lungs. My carefully constructed world shattered around me in an instant. I stared, speechless, as he pushed back his chair, the scraping sound echoing in the sudden void. There was no argument, no explanation, no flicker of the man I thought I knew. He didn't look back, didn't offer a single word of comfort, didn't even pack a bag. He just walked out of the house, out of my life, the front door slamming shut, with a finality that shook the very foundations of our home. I stood there, clutching my stomach, the unborn life within me suddenly feeling like a burden, a monumental mistake. Had I done something wrong? Was I the problem? The perfect dream had dissolved into a nightmare, leaving me utterly alone, confused, and drowning in a silence louder than any scream. The warmth of the setting sun now felt cold against my skin, mirroring the chill that had settled deep within my bones. I was adrift, in a house that felt suddenly vast and empty, with nothing but the echoing words and a growing sense of dread for company. The echo of the slamming door reverberated in the hollow chambers of my heart for days. I called, I texted, I left voicemails pleading, begging, questioning. Was it a fight? Had I said something wrong? Was he just scared? My mind scrambled for any logical explanation, anything that could reconcile the man who had promised forever with the ghost who had vanished. I drove by his office, his favorite coffee shop, even our friends' houses. A desperate, pregnant woman haunting the fringes of a life that no longer existed. Each unanswered call, each ignored message, each empty space where he should have been, chipped away at my fragile hope, replacing it with a cold, hard certainty. He was gone. He had chosen to abandon me and our unborn child. The burden I'd initially felt for my baby, transformed into a fierce protective instinct. But beneath it throbbed a raw, gaping wound of rejection. Weeks bled into a month, then 2. My body was changing. A constant, undeniable reminder of the life growing inside me, and the life that had been brutally ripped away. I was numb, adrift, oscillating between bouts of inconsolable grief and a fierce, almost primal anger. It was during one of these solitary, despairing nights, scrolling aimlessly through social media, that I saw it. A blurry photo, tagged by a mutual acquaintance, of Brendan at a beachside bar, laughing, his arm draped casually around a woman. My breath hitched. It wasn't the image itself that shattered me. I had already braced for the possibility of another woman. It was the woman's hair, her profile, a sickeningly familiar curve of her smile. My fingers trembled as I zoomed in, the grainy pixels solidifying into an unbearable truth. No, it couldn't be. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Heather, my stepsister, the girl I had welcomed into my home and my life with open arms, the one who had cried with me at my mother's funeral, the one I had shared secrets and silly dreams with. She was laughing, her head thrown back, nestled comfortably against Brendan's shoulder, a look of effortless intimacy passing between them. They looked happy. More than happy, they looked like a couple. A new couple. The world tilted. The air in my lungs turned to ash. It wasn't just betrayal. It was an act of insidious, calculated cruelty that burrowed deep into my soul, festering like a poison. My husband had left me for my own stepsister. The man who swore he loved me, the woman who was supposed to be family, had orchestrated this unthinkable deception beneath my very nose. Every casual visit, every family dinner, every sympathetic glance Heather had given me after Brendan left, now twisted into a grotesque charade. The double-edged sword of their betrayal plunged into my gut, tearing open wounds I didn't even know existed. I stumbled backwards, collapsing onto the floor, the phone clattering beside me, my hands flying to my swollen belly. My baby, innocent and pure, was now entangled in this web of deceit. The pain was so profound, so suffocating, that it felt as though my very essence was being ripped apart, leaving behind only the cold, sharp fragments of a shattered heart. I didn't confront them, not then. I couldn't. I just lay there, a broken vessel, drowning in the crushing weight of their new, sickeningly bright life. The image of Brendan and Heather, bathed in that sickeningly bright happiness, burned behind my eyelids for days. My shattered world offered no refuge, and in my desperate search for even a sliver of understanding, a shred of comfort, my thoughts turned to the one person who should have been my unwavering pillar. My father. I called him, my voice a raw whisper of the woman I used to be, recounting the brutal betrayal. His response, however, was not the outrage or comfort I craved. There was a pause, a hesitant cough, and then a deflection. "Abigail," he sighed, his voice carefully neutral. "Are you sure you're seeing this clearly? Brendan is a good man. And Heather? She's young. Perhaps there's a misunderstanding." His tone suggested I was a hysterical woman, imagining things. His concern, I quickly realized, wasn't for my broken heart or the life growing inside me, but for the ripple effect this might have on his carefully constructed new family life with Diane. Diane, my stepmother, was inevitably next. She materialized at my doorstep a few days later, not with a casserole or a hug, but with a stiff smile and eyes that darted around my living room, as if assessing its state of disarray. "Abigail, dear," she began, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "we've heard some upsetting things. It's truly a shame. But you know, sometimes these things happen. People grow apart. And Heather, well, she's always been a bit impressionable, hasn't she? Perhaps she just fell in love, quite innocently." She spoke of Heather's innocence, as if my sister hadn't stolen my husband and destroyed my life, as if my pregnancy was an inconvenience rather than a profound human experience. She suggested I needed to think practically about my situation, implying that a single mother with no husband and a scandalous family history would find life incredibly difficult. Her words twisted the knife, dismissing my pain as a mere setback and subtly aligning herself with the very people who had betrayed me. I was dismissed, my anguish invalidated, all to protect the fragile peace of her own family unit. Just when I thought I had plumbed the depths of human cruelty, Brendan's parents, Eleanor and Richard, arrived. They swept into my home uninvited, their faces stern, their eyes devoid of the warmth they once feigned. There was no, "How are you?" No, "We're so sorry." Only a cold, clinical assessment of my predicament. "Abigail," Eleanor began, her voice low and firm, "we've given this a lot of thought. Brendan made a mistake, a regrettable one, but he is our son. And this situation, it's complicated, for everyone involved." Richard chimed in, his gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. "Yes, very complicated. And you, Abigail, you're so young, you have your whole life ahead of you. Perhaps you should consider your options. You know, for the best." My breath hitched. "My options?" I whispered, a chill creeping up my spine. Eleanor leaned forward, her voice dropping conspiratorially, as if discussing a business proposition. "Yes, dear. An abortion. It would be cleaner. Less burden for you, for us, for Brendan. You could start fresh. This child, it will only complicate matters." A constant reminder, the words hit me like a physical blow. Not only had they condoned their son's infidelity, but they were now suggesting I eliminate the innocent life within me. The only tangible thing left of the future I had envisioned, all to save face and avoid complicating matters. They saw my baby as a problem to be solved, a stain to be removed. It wasn't about my well-being, or the child's. It was about their convenience, their reputation. My parents-in-law, who once spoke of grandchildren with such joy, were now casually discussing ending my pregnancy, as if it were a minor inconvenience. I stood there, surrounded by the ghosts of my past, and the chilling indifference of those who were supposed to be family. My father, detached. My stepmother, manipulative. My former in-laws, heartless. The silence that followed Eleanor's appalling suggestion was deafening, filled only with the frantic beat of my own heart, and the quiet stirring of the life inside me. In that moment, something shifted. The confusion, the self-blame, the desperate search for understanding, all evaporated, replaced by a searing clarity. They had abandoned me. All of them. My tears dried, replaced by a resolve so fierce it took my breath away. This baby was mine. My responsibility. My future. My unburdened hope. I would face it all. Alone. On my own terms. And no one, absolutely no one, would ever make me feel like my child was a burden. The clarity born from betrayal solidified into an unshakable resolve, but it couldn't magically ward off the relentless nausea that now arrived with brutal punctuality each morning. My body, once a source of quiet comfort, became a battlefield. Morning sickness wasn't just a fleeting discomfort, it was an all-consuming tempest that left me weak and drained. Every scent, every movement, threatened to overwhelm me. There was no one to bring me ginger ale, no gentle hand on my forehead, no comforting voice murmuring promises of relief. I learned to brace myself for each wave, clinging to the toilet bowl, my tears mingling with the sour taste in my mouth, all while clutching my stomach, whispering reassurances to the tiny life within. "We'll get through this, little one," I'd murmur, a mantra of survival. Exhaustion became my constant companion, a heavy cloak that draped itself over every waking moment. Working my demanding job at the event planning company, usually a source of joy and creative energy, now felt like scaling a mountain every day. I'd nap in my car during lunch breaks, my head against the cool window, only to jolt awake, disoriented and still bone-weary. Nights were restless, filled with anxiety about the future, about how I would manage, about the gaping emptiness in the bed beside me. The loneliness was a physical ache, a silent scream that no one heard. I watched other pregnant women, glowing and supported, their partners doting, and a sharp pang of loss would pierce through my hardened shell. I missed the laughter, the shared excitement, the simple comfort of knowing I wasn't utterly alone in this monumental journey. Finances, once a comfortable given, became a daily tightrope walk. Brendan had emptied our joint account before he left. A final, cruel flourish. What little savings I had quickly dwindled, eaten away by rent, utilities, and the burgeoning cost of prenatal vitamins and doctor visits. I learned the art of extreme budgeting. Dollar store groceries, cooking every meal from scratch, foregoing every luxury, even a much-needed new maternity outfit. My lunch at work often consisted of a banana and some crackers. The old house, now a monument to a shattered dream, was too expensive to maintain alone. The thought of moving, of uprooting myself while so vulnerable, was terrifying. But it was a looming necessity I pushed to the back of my mind. My only tether to sanity, my true north in this tempest, was Brenda, my best friend, with her fiery red hair and an even fiercer heart, stepped into the void left by my crumbling family. She didn't offer platitudes. She offered action. She was there for every tear, every panicked late-night call, every bout of sickness. She'd show up with bags of groceries, thoughtfully packed with bland, pregnancy-friendly snacks, or surprise me with a thrift store find, a tiny onesie, soft and worn, that brought tears to my eyes. "We're a team, Abs," she'd declare. Her arm wrapped around my shoulders as if to physically anchor me. She accompanied me to a particularly daunting prenatal appointment, sitting quietly, holding my hand while the doctor discussed birthing plans, her presence a silent rebellion against the loneliness. She filled the silence, not with empty words, but with a steady, comforting presence that told me, unequivocally, I wasn't alone. She was the family I chose, and she embraced her role with unwavering devotion. Prenatal classes, designed for beaming couples, were particularly brutal. I'd sit in the back, meticulously taking notes, watching husbands practice swaddling dolls or massage their wives' backs, a hollow ache growing in my chest. Each smiling face, each shared glance, was a painful reminder of what I had lost, what my baby would never know. Yet, beneath the grief, a flicker of fierce pride ignited. I was doing this, alone. I was learning, preparing, becoming everything my child would need. I might not have a partner, but I had a will of steel, and an ocean of love already swelling in my heart. The small spare room, soon to be Leo's nursery, became my sanctuary. It was far from perfect. No fancy crib, no designer wallpaper, just a coat of fresh, cheerful yellow paint I painstakingly applied myself, an old dresser I found at a garage sale and sanded down, and a crib Brenda helped me assemble, a hand-me-down from her cousin. Each item, from the tiny lamb mobile I painstakingly stitched from felt scraps to the stacks of pre-loved baby books, was imbued with my love. I'd spend hours in there, humming softly, tracing patterns on my belly, feeling the subtle flutter that was slowly growing into undeniable kicks. Those first definitive movements, those gentle thumps against my palm, were electric. They were tiny affirmations, powerful reminders that this wasn't just a burden or a mistake. This was life. My life, our life. And for this little heartbeat I would move mountains. My resolve was no longer just about defiance. It was about an overwhelming, unconditional love that promised a new beginning. The first searing contraction hit me like a rogue wave, dragging me from a restless sleep and demanding my full, immediate attention. It was unlike any pain I had ever known. A primal force that seized my entire being, twisting and clenching, then slowly receding, leaving behind a shaky silence. This was it. The moment I had prepared for, dreaded, and yearned for. All at once, panic warred with a fierce determination as I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed Brenda. Her voice, groggy at first, sharpened into immediate action when I managed to gasp out a single word. It's time. The hospital became a blur of bright lights, hushed voices, and the rhythmic beeping of machines. Brenda was my shadow, my steady anchor in the storm of my body's rebellion. She held my hand through every contraction, her brow furrowed in sympathy, her quiet encouragement a lifeline. She timed, she breathed with me, she whispered promises of a beautiful future, filling the cavernous silence that Brendan should have occupied. Each wave of pain was immense, consuming, but with it came the undeniable knowledge that I was closer to meeting the little person who had kept me going. My past sorrows, the betrayals, the loneliness, they all faded into a dull echo against the roaring crescendo of labor. This pain was productive, a passage, not a punishment. Then, there was a final monumental push, a raw, guttural cry that ripped from my very core. And suddenly, the world went quiet. A new sound filled the room, a tiny indignant wail. The doctor placed a warm, slippery bundle onto my chest, and in that instant, everything shifted. The excruciating pain evaporated, replaced by an explosion of pure, unfiltered love. He was tiny, impossibly small, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that blinked open, wide and curious. Meeting mine, my son, my Leo, his scent, a sweet milky newness, filled my nostrils. His tiny fingers curled instinctively around mine, a grip that felt stronger than any chain. I wasn't just looking at a baby. I was looking at my future, my purpose, the living, breathing embodiment of hope. Tears, hot and unstoppable, streamed down my face. They weren't tears of sorrow, but of an overwhelming, incandescent joy, a profound recognition of this perfect, innocent soul. All the hurt, the abandonment, the feeling of being a discarded mistake, it shattered and dissolved into nothingness. He was here. He was mine, and in his existence, every single struggle, every lonely night, every dismissive word, suddenly made sense. It was all worth it, more than worth it. He wasn't a burden, he was my salvation, the magnificent sunrise after my darkest night. I kissed his soft head, whispering his name, Leo, my Leo, a promise of unconditional love wrapped in every syllable. Brenda stood by my side, her eyes shining, a proud smile on her face, and I knew she felt it too. She was the first to touch his tiny hand, confirming her place as our chosen family. Leaving the hospital, walking out into the pale morning light, felt like stepping into a brand new world. I wasn't the broken, abandoned woman who had driven herself to appointments alone. I was a mother. A single mother, yes, but one imbued with a strength I never knew I possessed. A fierce protectiveness that thrummed through every fiber of my being. Leo, swaddled tightly, slept peacefully in his car seat, his tiny chest rising and falling with each gentle breath. The world outside looked different now, sharper, brighter, filled with possibilities. The path ahead was unknown, certainly daunting. But as I adjusted Leo's blanket and started the car, a profound sense of purpose settled over me. We had survived. We had thrived, and for this precious life, I knew I could conquer anything. This wasn't just an end to my pain. It was the powerful, breathtaking beginning of everything. That breathtaking beginning, the one I felt cradling Leo on the way home from the hospital, quickly morphed into a fierce, practical determination. The old house, once a symbol of dreams, now stood as a monument to broken promises and unspoken betrayals. Every room echoed with memories of a life that no longer existed, a constant, painful reminder of Brendan. Staying there was not an option. I couldn't build a new future for Leo within the walls of my shattered past. It was a difficult decision, fraught with financial anxiety, but ultimately, a necessary act of liberation. With Brenda's help, I scoured online listings and newspaper ads, eventually finding a small 2-bedroom apartment in a slightly older, but safe, neighborhood. It wasn't the picket fence dream, but it was ours. The move itself was grueling. Packing away fragments of my old life, sifting through what to keep and what to shed. The new apartment was bare, echoing. But as I painted Leo's nursery a soft, calming blue and arranged his crib, I felt a profound sense of ownership and peace. This was a true fresh start, built on my terms, with my hands. The first few months were a blur of sleep deprivation and caffeine. My demanding job in event planning, which required long hours and meticulous attention, felt like a cruel joke alongside the constant needs of a newborn. I'd pump milk in the break room, furtively wiping away tears of exhaustion before returning to a client meeting. Childcare was another mountain to climb. I couldn't afford a full-time nanny, so I cobbled together a patchwork solution. Brenda helping on some days, a kind neighbor on others, and eventually, a highly vetted, affordable in-home daycare run by a retired teacher. Each day was a tightrope walk, balancing deadlines with diaper changes, client calls with feeding schedules. I lived on instant coffee and the sheer willpower to provide Leo with the best possible life. Brendan had left me with practically nothing, so financial stability became my relentless pursuit. I scrutinized every bill, every grocery receipt. I learned to cook nourishing meals from the cheapest ingredients, to mend clothes instead of buying new ones, and to find joy in thrift store treasures for Leo. My spreadsheet became my Bible, tracking every dollar in and out. Slowly, painstakingly, the numbers started to turn. A small emergency fund began to grow. The fear of financial ruin, a constant weight on my chest, began to lighten, replaced by a quiet pride in my self-sufficiency. Each month I paid the rent, each time I put food on the table. It was a victory, a testament to my resilience. It was Brenda who encouraged me to join a local support group for single mothers. Reluctant at first, I soon found a camaraderie I hadn't realized I desperately needed. These women understood. They understood the exhaustion, the quiet grief for a lost partnership, the fierce love for their children, and the endless juggle. We shared tips on everything from budgeting and childcare to navigating difficult conversations with ex-partners. Their stories mirrored mine in unexpected ways, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly seen, truly heard, truly part of a community. It was a safe space to vent, to laugh, and to draw strength. Every milestone, however small, fueled my resolve. Leo's first gummy smile, a sunbeam breaking through the clouds, made every sleepless night worth it. His first giggle, a pure, unadulterated sound of joy, resonated deep within my soul. Paying off a small debt, finally treating myself to a much-needed haircut, securing a challenging but rewarding project at work. These were the bricks with which I rebuilt my empire. They weren't grand gestures, but they were consistent, deliberate steps towards a future where Leo and I would not just survive, but flourish. Each day was a testament to the fact that I was not just living, I was times creating, times a life, one victory at a time. The quiet rhythm of our new life, painstakingly built brick by brick, offered a fragile peace. For nearly 2 years, the silence from Brendan's family had been a relief, a confirmation of their indifference that, paradoxically, had given me strength. Leo was thriving, a cheerful, curious toddler, and every day with him was a balm to my past wounds. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, as I was pushing Leo on the swing at the park, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, almost letting it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Abigail? It's Eleanor." Brendan's mother. The voice on the other end was perfectly modulated, cool, and carried an undertone of practiced authority. "It's been a long time, how are you and the boy?" The casual reference to Leo, devoid of any genuine warmth, sent a prickle of ice down my spine. "He's fine, Eleanor," I replied, my voice steady, though my heart had begun a slow, heavy thud. "What can I do for you?" There was a slight pause, a calculated sigh. "Well, Abigail, Richard and I have been doing some thinking, and it just doesn't feel right. Leo is our grandson after all. He deserves to know his family. We'd like to To start seeing him. To be a part of his life. My grip tightened on the phone, my knuckles white. Asterisk. My grandson? His family? Asterisk. The audacity was breathtaking. They hadn't wanted him when he was a vulnerable fetus, when his very existence was an inconvenience. They had suggested abortion. And now? They wanted to waltz back into our lives as if nothing had happened, as if their cruel dismissal had never occurred. Eleanor, I said, taking a deep breath, ensuring my tone remained polite but unyielding. I appreciate you reaching out, but my answer is no. You both made your stance very clear when I was pregnant. You chose to abandon us. You even suggested I terminate my pregnancy to avoid complicating matters. Those words have consequences. Her voice hardened. Now, Abigail, that's unfair. We were concerned, trying to be practical. Things are different now. No, I interrupted, a wave of cold resolve washing over me. Things aren't different. My son doesn't need people in his life who only want him when it's convenient, or when it looks good for them. He has a loving home, and he is safe. You forfeited your right to be a part of his life the moment you suggested he wasn't worth keeping. The line went silent for a long moment, thick with unspoken outrage on her part. This is a mistake, Abigail. You'll regret this. I don't think so, I countered, my voice gaining strength. I'm protecting my son, and this conversation is over. I hung up, my hand shaking slightly, but my resolve firm. That call, and the subsequent attempts through letters and even a brief awkward encounter at the grocery store, where they tried to appeal to my good nature, were emotionally draining. Each interaction ripped open old scars, reminding me of the crushing loneliness and betrayal I had endured. But each time, standing my ground solidified the boundaries I had painstakingly built. Leo was not a bargaining chip, nor was he a prop for their belated sense of familial obligation. He was my son, and I would be his fiercest protector against anyone who sought to bring toxicity into his world. I learned that saying no to people who had once held power over me wasn't just an act of defiance. It was an act of profound self-preservation and love for my child. Months turned into another year, and the attempts from Eleanor and Richard eventually ceased, though a palpable chill settled over any chance encounter. The greater challenge, however, was the occasional fleeting shadow from the past. Once, while out for a rare solo coffee break, I saw Brendan. He was walking alone, his shoulders slumped, looking considerably thinner and less polished than the man I once knew. He didn't see me, his gaze fixed on the pavement ahead, and I ducked behind a planter, a knot forming in my stomach. The sight of him brought a faint echo of the initial pain, a ghost of the man who had shattered my world, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of detachment. He was a stranger now, his life a distant, irrelevant story. Another time, at a bustling outdoor market, I caught sight of Heather. She was laughing, her arm linked with a man I didn't recognize, her face alight with an easy joy. The familiar pang of betrayal flared, sharp and sudden, but it too quickly receded. She seemed happy, seemingly oblivious to the wake of destruction she had left behind. I realized then that their happiness, their lives, no longer had the power to define mine. They were simply figures from a past that I had survived, scars that had healed, leaving behind only faint, silvery lines. These distant sightings, though unsettling, served as potent reminders of how far I had come, reinforcing the path I had chosen, a path of independence, strength, and unwavering protection for my son. The distant sightings of Brendan and Heather, unsettling as they were, gradually faded into mere echoes, the background noise of a past I had firmly closed. Years continued their steady march, transforming Leo from a babbling toddler into a spirited, curious 5-year-old boy. He was my universe, and every ounce of my energy, every waking thought, was dedicated to nurturing his vibrant spirit and building the secure, loving home he deserved. My career in event planning, once a grueling necessity, had blossomed into a source of genuine pride and financial independence. The idea of romance, of letting another person into the carefully guarded sanctuary I had built for Leo and myself, felt not only unnecessary, but almost foolish. I had found my happiness, my purpose, in motherhood and my hard-won autonomy. I wasn't looking for anyone. Then, one sunny Saturday afternoon, at Leo's first youth soccer game, I met Walter. The air was filled with the shouts of excited children, the scent of fresh-cut grass, and the buzz of parents cheering. Leo, a whirlwind of boundless energy, was more interested in chasing butterflies than the ball, a trait I found utterly endearing. I was laughing, watching him stumble charmingly after a particularly colorful monarch, when a voice next to me chuckled. "He's certainly got his own interpretation of the game, doesn't he?" I turned to see a man standing a few feet away, his hands tucked casually in his pockets, a warm, genuine smile playing on his lips. He wasn't overtly handsome in the flashy way Brendan had been, but there was a quiet strength in his presence, an honesty in his kind blue eyes that immediately disarmed me. He had a slight, friendly crinkle at the corners of his eyes, and his hair, a pleasing shade of sandy brown, was just starting to silver at the temples. "He's making up his own rules," I replied, returning his smile. A rare, unguarded gesture for me. "I'm Abigail, and that's Leo." "Walter," he said, extending a hand. His grip was firm and warm. "My niece, Chloe, is on the yellow team. She's the one currently trying to juggle the ball with her head." We fell into easy conversation about the hilarity of 5-year-olds attempting organized sports. There was no pressure, no awkward flirtation, just a comfortable exchange about the chaos of parenthood. He seemed to genuinely enjoy watching Leo's antics, which immediately endeared him to me more than any compliment ever could. He wasn't trying to impress me. He was just present. Despite the effortless ease of our first encounter, my guard remained firmly in place. Every time Walter, who started showing up at games and even some school functions, engaged Leo in conversation or helped him tie his shoe, a tiny alarm bell would sound in my mind. What were his intentions? Was this too good to be true? My past had taught me that charm could mask deceit, and genuine interest could be a prelude to betrayal. Protecting Leo was paramount, and the thought of introducing any instability, any potential for future heartbreak, was terrifying. I found myself holding back, keeping my answers brief, maintaining a polite distance, even as he consistently offered easy conversation and quiet camaraderie. But Walter was remarkably patient. He never pushed, never made me feel obligated to reciprocate his friendly overtures. He simply existed in our periphery, a steady, kind presence. What truly began to chip away at my defenses was his interaction with Leo. He didn't just tolerate Leo. He genuinely connected with him. He'd kneel to Leo's eye level, listening intently to his rambling stories about superheroes and dinosaurs, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was truly engaged. Once, after a particularly frustrating game where Leo had gotten upset about not scoring, Walter sat with him on the sidelines, not dismissing his feelings but validating them, then gently encouraging him to try again next week. He wasn't trying to be a father figure. He was just a kind, consistent adult who saw Leo as an individual, not merely my son. One evening after another soccer game, Walter lingered to help me gather Leo's scattered belongings. As we walked to the car, the conversation turned more personal. I found myself, almost without conscious thought, sharing a brief, carefully edited version of my past, hinting at the difficult journey I'd had. He listened without interruption, his gaze steady and empathetic. "That sounds incredibly hard, Abigail," he said softly, his voice full of genuine understanding, not pity. "You're clearly an incredibly strong person, and an amazing mother." He didn't offer advice, didn't try to fix anything, didn't even ask about Brendan. He simply acknowledged my strength and my role, respecting the boundaries I hadn't even fully articulated. It was in that moment, seeing the genuine respect in his eyes, feeling the warmth of his unspoken support, that a tiny crack, almost imperceptible, appeared in the formidable wall around my heart. Slowly, cautiously, I began to let myself believe that perhaps, just perhaps, this love could be safe. This love could be real. The cautious hope Walter ignited, a small flicker in the darkness I had become accustomed to, steadily grew into a radiant flame over the next 5 years. My life, once defined by the jagged edges of betrayal and loss, had softened, bloomed into something utterly unrecognizable from the shattered woman I once was. The scars remained, a testament to the battles I'd fought. But they were now etched with a quiet strength, overshadowed by the vibrant tapestry of the present. Leo, now a bright, vivacious 10-year-old, was the beating heart of our home. His laughter was a constant melody, echoing through our cozy townhouse, a place we'd moved into a couple of years after Walter and I officially became a couple, a space that truly felt like time's hours asterisk. He was still a whirlwind of energy, but now channeled into mastering complex Lego structures, devouring fantasy novels, and excelling on the soccer field. Walter often cheering loudest from the sidelines. Walter had seamlessly and beautifully stepped into the role of a father figure, not by trying to replace Brendan, but by simply times being there asterisk. He was the one who helped Leo with his math homework, taught him how to properly bait a fishing hook, and patiently explained the rules of chess. Seeing them together, Walter's hand resting gently on Leo's shoulder as they talked, or their shared conspiratorial grins over a silly joke, filled me with a warmth that eased old aches I hadn't known still lingered. My career in event planning, once a necessity, had truly soared. I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving, creating beautiful, memorable experiences for clients, with a team I trusted and admired. I had managed to secure several high-profile corporate accounts, allowing me not only financial independence that felt liberating, but also immense creative fulfillment. There was a particular satisfaction in seeing a meticulously planned event come to life. From the initial concept to the final, flawless execution, it was a tangible representation of my ability to build something beautiful and lasting, a direct contrast to the wreckage of my past. But the greatest masterpiece I had built was my relationship with Walter. Our love wasn't a sudden, fiery passion that promised everything and delivered nothing. It was a slow, steady burn, built on foundations of trust, mutual respect, and shared laughter that rang genuine and true. We were partners in every sense of the word. We navigated the daily chaos of work and parenthood with a quiet understanding, supporting each other through late nights, small victories, and the occasional argument over whose turn it was to do the dishes. Every evening, we'd gather around our sturdy oak dining table, the aroma of Walter's homemade pasta or my experimental stir-fry filling the air, Leo regaling us with tales from his school day. Later, after Leo was tucked into bed, Walter and I would often sit on the porch swing, watching the stars, simply enjoying the quiet companionship, his hand finding mine without a word. Those moments, simple and profound, were the true fabric of our happiness. Looking at Leo's bright, unburdened smile, watching Walter patiently explain a new concept to him, I often reflected on the arduous journey that had led me here, from the shattered woman clutching her pregnant belly, drowning in betrayal and loneliness. I had become someone I barely recognized, someone stronger, more resilient, and infinitely happier. The challenges I had overcome weren't just hurdles, they were foundational bricks. They had taught me the true meaning of strength, the fierce power of a mother's love, and the profound beauty of a family built not on blood or obligation, but on choice, on unwavering love, and on the quiet, everyday magic of simply times being there, times for one another. This was my happy home, meticulously crafted from the ruins of my past, and it was everything, everything. The word hummed in my mind, a perfect chord of contentment. I savored it on a crisp autumn evening, curled up on the sofa with Walter and Leo, a bowl of popcorn shared between us as we watched a silly family movie. Leo's head rested on Walter's shoulder, a picture of effortless belonging. The phone, Usually a benign presence vibrated then, pulling me from the cozy tableau. It was an unfamiliar number, one I almost dismissed as spam, but something, an unseen flicker of unease, made me answer. Abigail, it's Brendan. The name hit me like a physical blow, shattering the serene atmosphere. It had been nearly a decade, 10 years, since I'd last heard his voice, not counting those distant sightings. 10 years of peace, of building, of healing. Now, it was as if a ghost had reached out from the past, chilling me to the bone. I stood, moving away from Walter and Leo, into the quiet of the kitchen, my heart thudding in erratic rhythm. His voice was different, strained, devoid of the charming confidence I remembered. It sounded broken. Brendan, I managed, the name feeling foreign on my tongue. What do you want? A sigh, heavy and laden with self-pity, came through the line. Abigail, I know this is a lot. I know I messed up. More than messed up. My life, it's fallen apart, everything. He launched into a rambling, disjointed narrative. His once promising career in tech had tanked, his brilliant new startup had failed spectacularly, leaving him with mountains of debt. The polished charm had evaporated, replaced by a haggard weariness that was almost palpable even over the phone. He sounded like a man drowning, desperate for a hand to pull him out. Heather, he explained, had walked out on him when the money dried up, and the glamorous life dissolved. She said I was a loser, Abigail. She just left. After everything. There was no self-awareness in his tone, only a deep-seated victimhood. He spoke as if her time's abandonment was the ultimate betrayal, completely oblivious to the brutal irony. He barely mentioned Leo. Certainly not with any fatherly longing, only as a casualty of his own personal catastrophe. Then came the pivot, the true reason for his call, delivered with a practiced softness that made my skin crawl. I've been thinking about Leo, he began, his voice attempting an intimacy that felt grotesque. He's my son, Abigail, my flesh and blood, and I want to be in his life. I want to be a father to him. I want to make things right. For him. For us. We could be a family again, Abigail, a real family. He spun a saccharine fantasy of reunion, of shared laughter and paternal guidance, all while neglecting the glaring fact that he had orchestrated our destruction. He wasn't offering an apology for the pain he inflicted, but a plea for a lifeline, using Leo as the perfect, innocent leverage. His regret was a self-serving performance, hoping to reclaim the comfortable life he'd so carelessly discarded, with me as his unsuspecting rescuer. A cold clarity settled over me, chilling and empowering all at once. The initial shock had given way to a surge of anger, but it was a controlled, focused anger, not the destructive rage of my past. He wasn't sorry for times what he did to us *. He was sorry for times what happened to him *. He wasn't crawling back out of love or remorse, but out of desperation and self-interest. He saw me not as a person he had wronged, but as a potential life raft to save his sinking ship. The man on the phone was the same selfish, manipulative person who had walked out 10 years ago. Only now, he was a broken version of himself, hoping I hadn't changed. He was about to be very disappointed. My heart, once vulnerable to his charm, now beat with an unwavering strength, impervious to his pleas. His pathetic pleas had echoed in my mind, but I knew I couldn't simply dismiss him over the phone. I needed to look him in the eye, to finally close this chapter properly, not just for my peace, but as a testament to how far I'd come. I agreed to meet, but only at my house, and only with Walter by my side. Now, as Brendan stood across my living room, the man who had once been my entire world was a hollowed-out echo of his former self. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by clothes that hung loosely on his frame, hinting at a lost battle with the bottle, or simply neglect. His eyes, once sparkling with ambition, were now clouded and weary, darting around the room, as if searching for something he'd misplaced. Walter stood beside me. A quiet, solid presence, his hand resting lightly on my lower back, grounding me. "So, Brendan," I began, my voice steady, devoid of the emotion I'd once poured into him. "You said you wanted to make things right. For Leo. For us. Let's talk about that." I watched him flinch slightly at my tone. A flicker of the old charming confidence trying, and failing, to reassert itself. "Abigail, please," he started, reaching a hand out, a gesture I instantly recoiled from. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I've changed. I've seen the error of my ways. Heather, she was a mistake. A big mistake. We can fix this. We can be a family again." I laughed. A short, bitter sound that held no humor. "A mistake, Brendan? You call abandoning your pregnant wife for her stepsister a mistake? You call allowing your parents to suggest I abort my child a mistake? A mistake is forgetting your keys. What you did was an act of calculated, brutal betrayal. You annihilated my life, Brendan. You left me penniless, alone, pregnant, and facing a future I couldn't even comprehend." His face paled, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I was young. I was scared. I didn't know what I was doing." "No," I countered, stepping slightly forward, my voice rising with the weight of years of unspoken pain. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You didn't leave because you were scared. You left because my pregnancy inconvenienced your selfish plans. You didn't care about me, about our baby, about anything but yourself. And now that your glamorous life with Heather has imploded, now that your career has crashed, now, times you crawl back, looking for a soft landing." I gestured around the comfortable, loving home I'd built. "You're not here for Leo. You're here because you need somewhere to go. You're here because you need someone to pick up the pieces of your time's broken life. Just like you left me to pick up mine." "That's not fair, Abigail," he protested, his voice gaining a desperate edge. "I'm his father. He deserves to know me. To have a real family." He glanced at Walter, a flash of resentment in his eyes, as if Walter were an interloper. Walter's grip on my back tightened almost imperceptibly, a silent reassurance. I didn't need him to speak. His presence was enough. "A real family, Brendan?" I echoed, letting the sarcasm drip from every word. "Do you know what a real family is? It's showing up. It's providing, protecting, loving, consistently, unconditionally, not when it's convenient, not when your own life falls apart." Where were you during Leo's first steps? His first words? His first day of school? Where were you when he had a fever and cried for his dad? My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through, determined. "You were nowhere. You were living your new, unburdened life while I was struggling to put food on the table, working 2 jobs, raising our son all by myself. You didn't make a single sacrifice for him. Walter has been more of a father to Leo in the last 5 years than you ever were or ever will be," Brendan stammered, his arguments dissolving into futile pleas. "I can change, Abigail. Just give me a chance. For Leo's sake." "There is no us, Brendan," I stated, my voice firm, final. "And there is no us with Leo. You forfeited that right the day you walked out. My son is safe. He is loved. He has a father figure who cherishes him and is present every single day. He doesn't need the instability, the heartache, or the lies you bring. My family is complete without you." I took another deep breath, the anger giving way to a profound sense of liberation. "This isn't about bitterness, Brendan. This is about protection. This is about boundaries. And these boundaries are non-negotiable. You are not welcome in my life, and you are not welcome in Leo's." He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing uselessly, finally understanding that his manipulation had failed. There was no more charm, no more self-pity, just a defeated slump to his shoulders. He looked utterly broken, and for a fleeting moment, I almost felt a pang of something akin to pity, but it vanished, replaced by the deep, resonant strength that pulsed within me. This wasn't my problem anymore. This wasn't my responsibility to fix. Now, if you'll excuse yourself, I finished. A dismissive wave of my hand. I think our conversation is concluded. He turned, a haunted look in his eyes, and walked out of my house, the front door closing quietly this time, without the violent finality of 5 years ago. This time, the silence he left behind was not empty, but filled with a profound sense of peace. Walter gently squeezed my hand, a silent acknowledgement of the battle won. I had faced the ghost of my past, stripped him of his power, and firmly, irrevocably, closed that chapter. The air in my home felt lighter, cleaner, imbued with the unwavering strength of my conviction. It was over. And I had never felt more powerful. The air in our home, now free from Brendan's lingering desperation, felt truly breathable, lighter and cleaner than it had in years. That final confrontation, while emotionally taxing, had galvanized me, transforming abstract boundaries into concrete imperatives. The very next morning, with Walter's quiet encouragement, I scheduled an appointment with a family lawyer. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about protecting Leo and securing the unwavering peace we had painstakingly built. The lawyer helped me draft a formal document, clearly outlining Brendan's lack of parental rights, due to abandonment and his past behavior, ensuring he could never again waltz back into our lives under the guise of fatherhood. It was a legal shield, a testament to my resolve that no one, especially not Brendan, would ever disrupt Leo's stability again. The official papers, filed and sealed, felt like the final nail in the coffin of that toxic past, a promise to my son that I would always guard his sanctuary. The more challenging yet profoundly necessary conversation was with Leo himself. He was 10 now, observant and intelligent. And while Walter had always been dad in every meaningful sense, I knew the day would come when he might ask about his biological father. I wanted him to hear it from me, honestly and gently, without bitterness, but with unwavering clarity about the choices Brendan had made. One quiet evening, after Walter had tucked Leo into bed and was in the kitchen cleaning up, I sat on the edge of Leo's bed. "Sweetheart," I began, my voice soft. "Mommy wants to talk to you about something important." I explained that some people are biological parents, meaning they help make a baby, but that being a real parent means being there, loving, and taking care of you. I told him, in simple terms, that Brendan was his biological father, but that he had made choices that meant he couldn't be a part of our family. I focused on Brendan's actions times his absence, his lack of support rather than my emotional pain, ensuring Leo understood it was never about him. Brendan decided he couldn't be a dad, I explained. But that doesn't change how loved you are. And it doesn't change that Walter is your dad. The one who chose to be here every single day. The one who loves you more than anything. Leo listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. "So he just left because he didn't want to be a dad?" he asked, a hint of confusion in his voice. "Yes," I confirmed, stroking his hair. "He made that choice. And because he made that choice, we made sure you would always be safe and loved without him. Walter chose to be your dad, Leo, and that's a very special kind of love." I saw a moment of thoughtful silence, then a gentle nod. He wrapped his arms around me, holding tight. "I love Walter, Mom," he whispered. "He's my dad." My heart swelled with relief and fierce pride. I had navigated the treacherous waters, protecting his innocence without sacrificing the truth. Walter's presence, always a comforting anchor, solidified even further after that conversation. He didn't just continue to be Leo's father figure. He became Leo's father. There was no longer any ambiguity, even unspoken, about his role. They had their own rituals. Saturday morning pancake breakfasts Walter painstakingly prepared, epic Lego building sessions, and weekly adventure walks in the nearby woods, often returning with pockets full of interesting rocks or tales of imagined creatures. Walter was the first call when Leo skinned a knee, the patient teacher for difficult school projects, and the unwavering voice of reason when teenage hormones started to stir prematurely. His love for Leo was profound, steady, and unconditional. A stark contrast to the fleeting, self-serving affection Brendan had briefly offered. He was the safe harbor, the solid ground upon which Leo's world was built. And watching them together, a deep, abiding gratitude washed over me daily. Reflecting on my journey, from the shattered woman I once was to the one who now stood firmly in her power, felt like gazing at two entirely different people. I remembered the desperate confusion, the crushing self-blame, the feeling of being a discarded inconvenience. I remembered the raw, agonizing pain of betrayal, the loneliness that felt like a physical weight. But I also remembered the fierce protective instinct that bloomed with Leo's first kick. The quiet strength found in solitary prenatal classes, the resilience forged in financial struggles, and the profound camaraderie discovered in a single mother's support group. I wasn't just a survivor. I was a thriver, a builder of empires, not of corporate wealth, but of love, security, and unwavering self-respect. The profound peace that settled over our home was not just the absence of conflict. It was the vibrant, humming presence of genuine happiness. It was the warmth of Walter's hand in mine during a quiet evening, the echo of Leo's laughter bouncing off the walls, the simple joy of a shared meal. Free from the insidious toxicity of the past, our lives unfolded with a beautiful, unburdened grace. I gazed at my son, so full of life and unblemished joy, and at Walter, whose love had healed wounds I thought would never close. This life, built brick by painstaking brick, chosen with every fiber of my being, was everything I had ever truly needed, and in its quiet, consistent beauty, I found not just peace, but a deep, resonant gratitude for the path, however arduous, that had led me home. This profound gratitude wasn't merely a fleeting emotion. It was the bedrock upon which my entire life was now defined. No longer was I the woman haunted by betrayal, the victim of a husband's cruelty and a family's indifference. My story had been rewritten, not by chance, but by conscious, loving choices. My existence now resonated with the melody of genuine love, the deep, abiding comfort of family, and an unwavering, hard-earned self-respect that shone brighter than any stolen promise. The past hurts, once gaping wounds, had become faint, silvery lines, marks of survival, not definitions of my identity. The journey had been arduous, yes, filled with moments I thought would break me. But in those very breaks, I discovered an unbreakable core. True strength, I learned, didn't lie in never falling, but in rising again, each time a little more resolute. It wasn't about wishing the past away, but about choosing, every single day, to turn towards the light, choosing to nurture Leo, choosing to rebuild my finances, choosing to open my heart to Walter, and ultimately, choosing my own happiness. This strength was forged not in the absence of pain, but in its crucible, shaping me into a woman capable of creating something beautiful from the ashes of devastation. Looking at Walter, his kind eyes reflecting a love as steady as a lighthouse beam, and then at Leo, so full of unadulterated joy, I understood the true meaning of family. It wasn't a bond dictated by blood, a title easily discarded, or a convenience to be retrieved when other options failed. It was an active, deliberate choice, a daily commitment to show up, to cherish, to protect, and to unconditionally love. Walter hadn't been there for Leo's birth, but he had been there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every school play, building a foundation of affection and trust that ran deeper than any biological connection. This was my real family, woven from shared laughter, quiet support, and the unwavering belief in one another. My path, once a desolate stretch of uncertainty, had led me to a destination I hadn't dared to dream of. It was a path that, I believed, held hope for anyone who felt lost, betrayed, or utterly broken. Healing wasn't a linear journey, nor was it a swift one. but it was always possible. It began with a single step: choosing oneself, choosing one's peace, and fiercely protecting the love that one built. Even in the darkest of times, there was an inherent resilience within each of us, a quiet fire waiting to be rekindled. One had to choose to fan that flame, choose to believe in their capacity to create a life not just free from pain, but overflowing with purpose and profound joy. My story was just one testament to this truth, a quiet affirmation that life could indeed be rebuilt. I knew there were countless others who had walked similar, or even more challenging paths, and I hoped that by living my truth, by embodying the resilience I had found, I could, in some small way, illuminate a path for them. This quiet fire, once rekindled within me, could perhaps warm others, a testament that even after the deepest betrayals, a life defined by love was always within reach. My own heart, full and unburdened, was vibrant proof of that.